Welcome back, my friends. Today we're going to be reloading some 223 with some of these really cool bullets that were sent in by a very generous viewer. We've picked out Varget and BLC2 because that's what he has in his notes. We're going to be using Lake City Brass Remington 7.5 small rifle primers. And the real star of the show, the 25 pieces of the Speer silver match bullet, 52 grains, flat base hollow point. These things are stinking sick. I don't know when they were being made or discontinued, but he had some of these left in his stash, he said, and he sent some to me to try, and that's what we're going to be doing today. I am keeping one of them though for this dummy round because this looks stinking sweet, and I want to put it up on the shelf somewhere so I can stare at it and go, wow. Anyways, thanks Don, this thing is freaking cool. He suggested an overall length of 2.200, and we're pretty close to that. Yeah, there we go, depending on how the calipers are feeling these days. So we're good here with our overall length. Our brass is already prepped, by the way. We've reamed out our pockets. We're full length sized with a small base sizing die. Chamfer and D-bird, all that fun stuff trimmed down to length. So these are good to go. All we have to do is prime them, throw our powders, and then seat the bullets. And we're not going to be crimping today, so no need for that. Well, first things first, we need to get our cases primed here, and for that we're going to be using the Frankfurt Arsenal hand priming tool. Yeah, that's this guy here. That's the number 4 shell holder for 223, which happens to be the same number that Lee uses. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if they use Lee's numbering system for their cartridges. But anyways, we're going to be using our Remington 7.5s like we said. We only need 24 of them, so we'll get those out here. We just gotta pop this off, which slides forward, which is kind of awkward because it grabs the corners, but oh well. So 24, we'll hold 6 of them. Okay. Finally. How is it? Look! Oopsie. So that was pretty much not cool at all. But we found all of them, I think, except one. Well, I found the correct number of primers, except this one is a CCI of some sort, and I'm missing one of these Remingtons. So, we'll get rid of this guy or put him up here somewhere. I don't know if that's a rifle primer or a pistol primer or Federal or CCI or who knows what now. So, I'll try and prime everything. If we're missing one, I'll get out one more of these. But dang it, that was like $18 worth of primers right there, you dummy. Now let's close the slider, and this goes over yonder way. Now they're secured, and we'll just shove her up in the back here, which ends up being the front. It's kind of weird to get used to at first, but you actually hold it this direction with the pan up this way, which I guess makes sense because gravity. Anyways, we can go ahead and loosen up this guy here to allow the flow of primers, and there it is hanging out the top there. We're ready to go now. Oh yeah, that felt nice and tight. Give it a nice spin a few times and make sure it's fully in there, nice and flush or just below, and that felt nice and tight there. This is once fired range brass, recently trimmed up and cleaned and all that, and the primer pockets were reamed out, not swaged. And I'm dropping everything today, but yeah, very nice. Yeah, very nice. Well, I'll let you know if anything weird happens. Then we'll get on to our powder here just shortly. Yeah, dang it, I'm short one primer. Oh well. That'll teach you to be more careful, you dummy. Just a one. I know you're not supposed to handle them with your fingers and stuff, but it's just the one. And really, as long as you're not fingering the old anvil and all that stuff with your dirty, greasy paws, you should be fine. So it's not gonna hurt nothing. Okay, yeah, these all feel like very nice primer pockets. As far as I know, the brasses once fired because I had to ream all of the crimps out of them. So there's our 24 pieces. Let's get on to pouring powder. Okay, so we're on to powder now that we're primed, and in his notes he says 25.3 of Varget, but we're going to start with BLC2 here with 25.5 grains there. Same overall length. And I am not scared of that charge at all, because here with a 55 grain, they're pushing all the way up to 27.5 grains. So a lighter bullet with 2 grains less powder. This is going to be a totally safe load. That's definitely within the starting range. So very nice. Shouldn't be super hard on the brass or anything. So let's get going with our 25.5 grains. All right, so since we're not doing that many cases, I'll just be using this lead dipper. The 1.6 cc is going to get me within a grain or two, and then we'll just trickle up to where we need to be. But this is a new scooper here, so we got to kind of just wiggle it around to get it sort of seasoned, and then we won't have as much little ball particles of powder there being all staticky and binding as well. So now you can see up here where it hasn't actually gotten much powder on it, we have stuff sticking, but down here it's got a little bit of the residue and powder from the powder on there. So that'll help you if you have new scoopers to not have it stick so much. Just kind of wiggle it around real good. And then once, you know, after a while of using it, you'll see them change color and you'll have less issue with the powder sticking to them. But usually if you just give it a good whack on there, it'll fall off anyways. Okay, that was a nice derail. So we're gonna start with a scoop here, throw it up on the scale. I don't even need to make sure that this is like accurate or anything because we're trickling anyways. So a nice scoop up into the scale there, and then I'm gonna trickle up to the end. All right, there we are in the pan. And we're dead on at 25.5. So not to be a shill or anything, but these are my Frankfurt Arsenal aluminum powder funnel kit, and they work awesome also because the static doesn't actually build up on the aluminum like it does a plastic powder funnel. So when we go to dump this, it goes right in and you don't have any hanging up or bridging or any of that fun stuff. So there we go. And we still have plenty of room in here. Again, this is basically a starting charge, so we don't have to worry about being compressed or any of that fun stuff. So here we are. We'll go ahead and dump the rest of our powder and then seat them all at the same time. Or maybe I should just seat this one right now so I don't knock the tray over and then lose all that progress with the powder, and that's not fun. So yeah, I'll go ahead and seat this first one. And so since these are a flat base, they're a little difficult to get started. You can see it's hard to balance. So as you run it up into your die, you got to be very careful to keep it aligned almost manually with your offhand, I guess. That's not running the RAM. So let's do that and I'll be right back with you. And not a problem there at all. Let's get a quick measurement, see how close we are to 2.20. All right, 2204. Now we're going to be a little bit higher on these next ones, I believe, because I used the same bullet to set up the die, which will actually kind of wear a ring in where you've been wearing it back and forth trying to set up your die 10 times. So I'm going to scoot it down just a tad on the old seating stem there, and we should just call it good from there. No worries. So I went maybe a friggin' 1/16 of a turn or something, and we're at 2201. I'm going to call that because 1/1000th of an inch, or we might just have that much variation within our hollow points. So someday I'll get a comparator and we can compare the base to ogive, but for now, 1/1000th of overall length variation is fine with me. So let's get on to dumping some more powder here. Wowee. So talk about variations in overall length with your hollow points. This one is at 2185. So I don't think I turned that hard on the seating stem, so I'll set this one back there and we'll try the next and see where it lands. Visually inspect that we have powder, very nice. And we'll seat him up here. And I guess I'll check my overall length, make sure it's not like too crazy. Okay, this one's also 2185. Maybe it, I guess I'll come back out a smidgen. Let me re-measure this one, make sure I didn't do something crazy. 2201. So let me try to run it again, and if it gets shorter, then I screwed up somehow. Nope, it's just a variation in our bullets. Very interesting. So let me run through these. I'm not going to worry about our OAL. If I had a comparator, once again, I bet those numbers would be much closer together, but I'll get back with you here when we move on to Varget. Alrighty, we've got our 12 loaded up here with BLC2. Time to empty out our trickler here and move on to Varget. Always make sure you get everything out of the hopper, out of your little straw there. Turn it around, rotate it, flip it up and down. Do them both several times. Make sure you don't have anything left over from your last powder. And I just use this funnel from the hardware store, chop it off so it fits onto your bottles. It fits into your powder measures, super easy to use. It even kind of fits there, but we have no use for that. Anyways, we're done with the BLC2. We'll get it up, get it out of the way. And now we're on to Hydrogen Varget. And now again, he says 25.3 grains is his load, and on the bottle, they have a max charge of 27.5 with a heavier bullet. So again, logic tells you 2 grains less is pretty much the starting charge, and we're using a lighter bullet, thus less pressure. Gonna be super safe to try out. Thanks for not blowing us up, Don. Let's get on to Hydrogen Varget. So now you see Varget is much different than BLC2 in that it is extruded. Though they are very similar in burn rate, Varget's just slightly faster burning, thus you need less pressure. But you can see we're extruded, and that should give you more temperature, stability, and consistency and all that stuff, which is why they call it an extreme powder. And BLC2 is basically your ball powder, military load, bulk, progressive loading, spamming sort of stuff. But, you know, I'm sure there's good groups to be had with both, or else he wouldn't tell me to use it. So we're going down with our charge to 25.3. Let's get one of those poured out and we'll check our case fill. And again, the lead dipper tells us it's going to be the same size dipper, but we're going to be a little short on this one by a grain or two. That just means more trickling, no big deal. And that's because the next size scooper up would have been over the charge I need, and that's just annoying. How about we get all these flipped over, dummy? Whoopsie. Pattern's all screwed up, but it don't matter. I just need to be able to get the funnel on them. Oh, we'll start back here. We're at our charge weight up here. And it looks like roughly that much powder. Good deal. And you see a slightly higher case fill. Again, because these are extruded, so it does take up more capacity. And I bet if we were anywhere near the 26 grain mark, it would start to get compressed, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just have to worry about your bullet getting pushed back out and stretching out your overall length. We'll go ahead and seat this and see if there's any shake in and room in there. And yeah, the shake test tells us there's still a little room in there. And we could totally probably push it up to 27, whatever grains the max was, but I'm not doing that. I'm going off of Don's data. But there we are again, 2.87, pretty close on the OAL. Good enough for this. So let's go ahead, we'll get those all dumped out here. All them seated. and we'll probably get to the range here someday. Stay tuned. Almost done here with the Varget, and we're not having any problems at all. Nice case fill, nice and consistent, and man, these look freaking awesome. All right, we got all 12 loaded up with the Varget. I'm gonna mark on these cases like a V or something just so I know they're different. I've already set the BLC2 loads aside and labeled that bag, but I didn't label the brass. So if I were to mix these up, or maybe later after the range when I want to inspect the brass, I should be able to identify them if I mark them rather than trying to keep them in bags. And you know, I'm a dummy, so it's hard to keep that stuff straight sometimes. Anyways, we had no issues seating our bullets. They were, you know, they're itty bitty and they're a flat base, so you just got to make sure to ride it up into the seating die while you're running the ram up. But other than that, no big deals. So let's go ahead and get out to the range. Okay, and we're back from the range. It was super busy. It's actually New Year's Day, so happy New Year's everybody. But it was like beautiful 70 degrees out. Hardly any wind, just coming at 6 o'clock. It was steady, so there weren't really any gusts. And like I said, yeah, it was busy. I was there between 11 and maybe 3 to 4-ish. And there were dozens of people in and out all day. It's busier than I've ever seen it before, which was cool, but we had to take several breaks and people switching out targets and so on and so forth. So I have all the excuses today for some of these shots. But anyways, overall, super awesome performance. I'm actually pretty impressed here by the BLC2. So let's take a look. So we started at BLC2. This was my cold bore shot, but of course it's on the paper, so we have to include it. This is right at about 1.7, somewhere in that ballpark, and you'll see this red dot here. That's because after we had a cold range, I freaking aimed at this target for this one here. So if we moved that, transposed it up, that would be in this group here. So however we measure this, we're right at 1.6-ish, 1.7. So not the best performance ever, but if we get rid of the cold bore shot, we are just over an inch. That's pretty impressive for 11, right in that little area. So yeah, we'll call it 1.1 for 10 shots at least. Pretty good stuff. There's 5 of them, all touching right there. So very impressive, Mr. Don. I don't know what you were shooting through, but I had a 20-inch Howa, 1 and 10 twist barrel. I've never shot a 52 grain. Well, I lied. I've shot a cast 52 grain. I've never shot a jacketed 52 grain. But this gun certainly seems to like the lighter bullets. And then we'll go ahead, take a look at our brass really quick. These were basically starting loads if you remember back from our data, and that's what the brass looks like. They were super low recoil. These primers are basically round, like they barely got hit. No ejector marks or anything on our case heads unless they were previously there from a different gun. Yeah, we had good seal on the necks, nothing blew by into the shoulders. All that was good. Great stuff here with BLC2. Looks pretty clean burning. So let's take a look at Varget here. Again, we can omit this shot because that was from BLC2, of course, but not quite as good. Again, I'll take some of the blame for this. I was kind of rusty, haven't had any trigger time in a while. So if we had those 2 outliers, we're at 2.1, pretty gross. Pull those out. And then, you know, there's 1.2, maybe this one's a little bigger, 1.4 for 10 shots. So that's a little respectable, I suppose. I mean, if you're just groundhogging or whatever, that would probably work pretty well. I'm not sure on the velocities, but it looks like Varget was either a little bit lower or the harmonics just decided that its point of impact was going to be there. Who knows? Well, actually, I mean, if we look at this sort of most dense cluster, compared to this, that's a pretty similar point of impact. And again, the charge weights were only 0.2 difference between the 2 powders. Had we used the chronograph, we'd probably see that they were almost identical. I'm sure that's why Don loaded it that way. And then the Varget. So yeah, V for Varget, again, same, super round primers, hardly any pressure, pretty much a starting charge. And perhaps slightly cleaner than the BLC2 and a clean burn. No unburnt powder or anything like that. Good stuff here on the brass. I'd imagine if that's what you loaded over and over, you'd get several firings because it's not doing a whole lot of work there. Anyways, pretty impressive stuff. I bet if we just overlaid these two groups, you know, that's 24 shots in about 2 inches. So that's pretty good stuff. I mean, I'm not the best shot in the world or anything, but for me, this is some pretty good shooting. Again, cold barrel. So then imagine them all there. Pretty good stuff. Well, that was really fun, Mr. Don. And I was expecting Varget to, you know, do Varget things because it's Varget, blah, blah, blah. And then I was expecting BLC2 to be pretty crappy because it's, you know, what you just load up your spammy 55 grainers with, or your crappy 308 M80 loads or whatever. Anyways, totally blew my mind. I'm gonna have to dig deeper into BLC2. And of course, you know, Varget probably is gonna outperform that in several other applications. But for today, super interesting results. That's pretty cool. And thanks again, Mr. Don, for sending those out. That was a fun little test. Thanks for coming with me, guys. We'll see you in the next video.